Recording, everybody. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to Two Black Girls, One Rose.
Where together we'll uncover what we can learn about modern dating, love, and relationships from popular television. I'm Natasha.
And I'm Justine.
And welcome back to the Love is Blind Aftershow. Today we'll be joined by a very special guest, sex educator Danielle Bezalel. She's going to help us break down the Stephen and Monica craziness that we saw, Marissa and Ramses and their issue of contraception that's coming up, and so much more. We're excited to have Danielle here. She has over 10 years experience providing LGBTQ plus inclusive, comprehensive sexual health education to the masses. And she talks all things sex ed every week on her podcast, Sex Ed with DB. So we're excited to have her here to help us break down all things sex that was going down in episodes 7, 8, and 9. Okay, before we dive in with Danielle, a couple things we got to chat about. Young Philly. I need a little education as to what's going on with this man.
That's totally fine. Yep, I got you, friend.
But some wild stuff if you just Google his name. So we're going to talk about him and all these crazy allegations. And I watched a new show over the weekend, guys. Not new, season 2. But I breezed through it. Queen's Court. For anybody who watches Queen's Court, season 2 is back. So good. I texted Justine. I was like, this show is incredible. Season 2 is phenomenal. It's a dating show. Obviously, we love dating shows here, but I just watched it for funsies, and I'm sure there's some of you out here who watch, so I'm going to just fill Justine in about it, and we'll chat about Queen's Court. If you want to listen to this episode ad-free on video or hear a juicy pre-show all about Young Philly and Queen's Court, gotta join the party on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/2 Black Girls 1 Rose. You can also try out a Patreon membership with a 7-day free trial. A lot of good stuff on Patreon. We are also still watching America's Sweethearts, Dallas Cowboys Cheerleaders. So join our $10 tier for access to all of our reaction content. And shout out to the Rose Garden. Love you. Love you guys. All right, we are so excited to welcome to our Love is Blind after show, sex educator Danielle Bezalel.
Hello. Hi. Happy to be here.
Yes.
Happy to have you.
Yeah, happy to have you here. Danielle's a graduate of Columbia University with an MPH in sexuality and reproductive health. She brings over 10 plus years experience providing comprehensive, pleasure-focused, non-judgmental, medically accurate, LGBTQ plus inclusive sexual health education to the masses. Danielle is also a creator, executive producer, and host of Sex Ed with DB, a feminist podcast bringing you all the sex ed you never got through unique and entertaining storytelling. And she's here today to help us break down episodes 7 through 9 and all the funky sex stuff that was happening in these episodes.
Incredibly funky.
Yes. So thank you for joining us, Danielle. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no. Like I kind of said before we started recording, dream come true to be able to watch Love is Blind for work instead of just for my personal addiction that I have to the show. Both are good, though.
Yeah, that's our first warm-up question for you is how many seasons of Love is Blind have you watched?
I've seen every American season of Love is Blind.
Every American. Okay.
You're in it. Okay. A true fan. I love this.
Once again, I'm obsessed. I'm not like typically a reality girly, but they've put something in the water in Love is Blind. I don't know what, I'm sure it's kind of a universal experience, but it is very intriguing to me as someone who knows that it's a silly show that, the premise is whack for all intents and purposes, but I will still consume every piece of content that they put out.
Love that.
Definitely. Do you have a favorite season?
I mean, I think the first one was just like so weird and novel, and like Lauren and Cameron, everyone's kind of like rooting for them. So I just kind of feel like it was like the purest season. I feel like since then it's hard to say just because people know what the show is. It's hard to know intentions. The influencer culture has really blown up in the past 5 years. So I would say like the people who first went on it get the most props from me personally.
Okay. Yeah. That
pure is a good way to say it. Season 1 felt very pure.
Yeah. Like they really were just looking for love. And now it's just like all sorts of craziness in the past couple seasons.
Do you, when you watch Love is Blind, like as an educator, right? Do you prefer shows like that? You said you're not really into reality TV. Do you watch any of the other, like, are you familiar with Too Hot to Handle?
I have seen the first season of Too Hot to Handle, but I think that was kind of my limit of, I think, let me rephrase. I feel like I definitely have seen way more like Netflix reality TV. Like I've never watched like any sort of like Real Housewives show or like Love Island or like things like that. But I feel like I have seen a few of the Netflix reality TV shows. I don't know if it's like the way that they produce them that's just so yummy to me. But they do some tricks there to make us watch.
Yeah, they're very beautifully shot, very beautifully produced. But Too Hot to Handle is an interesting one because it's sex focused completely, and these people like can't resist each other. So I think that's an interesting one from you. But I understand only getting through season 1 because it's
so dumb,
dumb, dumb,
dumb. Oh man, oh my god.
It really makes me feel stupider, I would say.
Yeah,
definitely.
Right? Yeah, it feels like you wasted your time. It doesn't feel as like yummy and delicious.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For when you watch Love is Blind, who do you watch it with?
My husband will kind of pretend like he's not watching. Like he'll kind of do the creep around.
We know that.
Where he's like, I'm busy, but
what he say? What she just do?
he'll do kind of, and then like we'll make it fun. Like, okay, I don't know if you consider the Great British Baking Show reality TV. It technically is, but it's like wholesome and sweet. Like he and I in the beginning of that season will kind of take bets as to who the top 5 will be. So we have people to root for. And so we sometimes in the past have done that with Love is Blind to be like, okay, I'm betting they're going to walk down the aisle, and I'm betting actually that this person's going to say yes first. So it's a really fun way that we kind of gamble with each other.
Yeah, that's fun.
Just for, energy's sake, we don't bet any money because we would both kind of be in the hole. I think it's very unpredictable. But anyway, he does sometimes watch. I feel like mostly though, I kind of need to watch by myself because I'm just kind of like focusing in. I just enjoy me and the TV. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Protective space for you.
I mean, I would watch it with friends, but I feel like it's so, I can't help myself, and it's so bingeable that I'm just like, okay, if my friend wants to go home now, I gotta keep going. Like I'm gonna keep watching it.
Okay, so let's dive right in. Obviously, we have to start with Monica and Steven.
Sure do. I was reading some articles about that the past couple days.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was kind of curious to see what the zeitgeist is saying about it, just because. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you can ask away, but I just have a lot of thoughts and feelings about this.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we see on the honeymoon, Steven made a very weird comment about, getting some fame, being in the spotlight, female fans coming out of the woodwork, suck his dick.
Very, almost. Yeah. And everyone's kind of like walking away. And was it Catherine who's left? Who's just like, okay, I guess I have to sit here and listen to this.
Taylor.
Taylor. I don't know why. She looks like a Catherine to me, but I keep, Taylor.
I knew what you're talking about,
Taylor, okay.
So he makes this weird comment, almost like he was threatening to cheat, damn near. And it was a very bizarre comment that Monica just kind of shrugged off.
Right.
I was curious from your perspective, as a sex educator, were alarm bells going off for you? Did you see this as a sign of something to come?
I think, yes, this is kind of what I meant by like in the most recent seasons, it's very clear that people are in it in large part, it seems, at least the men in particular, for kind of like the Instagram fame. There are definitely women who do this too, but I do think that someone saying out loud, like, oh, people are going to be, when you're a famous guy, people are just in your Instagram DMs. And it's kind of like, okay, do you want to talk about something? Or is this something that you're processing? Because to me, it felt very clearly like he maybe was experiencing this and was trying to maybe process it, but doesn't know how to healthily do that. Or doesn't know how to like put up those boundaries in a way that doesn't make other people feel bad, with his partner and other people.
So you're saying his normal Steven electrician Instagram, he's already receiving those DMs and doesn't know how to handle that.
Yeah,
he was already getting the DMs.
I think he was already getting them. And I think that, it's just like a really shitty thing because obviously they include, talk about the production quality. They included that in the show to foreshadow. They like wanted us as the viewer to know that there was something fishy from the beginning here. And so I think that definitely I also studied film in undergrad. So I'm definitely kind of thinking in all of these different ways of like how this story is coming together. And it's like, that's not on accident that they showed us that. So to answer your original question, like, yes, I kind of knew that was foreshadowing for something that we would see down the line that we wouldn't like.
Yeah. Oof.
We learned that Monica has been pulling back in the sex department. She was feeling uncomfortable having sex with Steven once he expressed concerns about getting married. And he stated that women have a lot of buttons that they don't even know how to push, what they are. And a lot of times in heterosexual relationships, the woman's consent is the ultimate consent. And even Steven alludes to this, right? If the wind blows, I'm hard, I'm ready to go. And for Monica, that's not the case. When Steven's stepping outside of their relationship, is that a way for him to gain that power back that Monica currently has? Because she said no first, right? So he's like, well, fuck it, I'll cheat on you.
That's kind of interesting. I don't know. I feel like the way that they kind of explained the cheating was just so bizarre to me. Like they didn't really like tell us details. And I wonder if a lot was kind of like cut out of that interaction for whatever reason. But I think like, I guess the first response I have to this whole thing isn't necessarily about like the buttons piece, but more so around the way that kink is kind of automatically portrayed as like, you're disgusting, you're a freak.
Yes.
Like, it's paired with the cheating in such a way that is inappropriate in my eyes as a sex educator. And I think that like we're furthering shame for people who have outside of the norm, quote unquote, sexual experiences. That is not shameful. It is shameful that he betrayed her. That is shameful.
Right.
Like we should be very clear about like what is shameful and what isn't. And I think that with the vanilla-ness that is like Love is Blind and kind of attending to this kind of like Midwestern, white religious audience, they're playing to their audience and being like, yeah, no, we know like kink is gross. That's why we're going to put this guy on blast. And like, there's so many problems with that I was kind of watching as like, oh, what a miss, right? Like this is such a miss and such a problem. So that's kind of, this is my like overriding kind of feeling, unfortunately.
Yeah, I felt the exact same way. I feel like his kink of butt stuff was a separate conversation from him cheating and maybe even wanting a non-monogamous situation with his partner that he couldn't express, or maybe he has like family stuff and he like can't really like have that kind of relationship or doesn't feel safe having that relationship with like outside parameters. But I did feel really passionately those were separate and kind of, it was a miss that they were intertwined. And I think it's really cool that you focus on, you have like a queer focus to your studies as well, because I do believe that all these phobias, racism, homophobia, transphobia, they all affect everybody. It's bad for everyone, right? So this kind of like gay shame that he has with pegging and anal and the way that he's being portrayed so negatively by Netflix, and I'm sure received negatively by the viewers, is harmful, right, to everybody.
Nobody wins in this game. Like these people are like, no matter kind of the decisions they make on camera, there are really wacky people out there who definitely are sending these people death threats no matter what they do, right? Especially like these are just people who like decided to go on this show. They made the decision, yes, but I don't think any of them could ever be prepared for the kinds of reactions that people have. And let alone like if he is so open and, there were a lot of parts to him, to his person that I really enjoyed, that I thought, oh, this is kind of refreshing. Like it seems like he's an honest person. Clearly, there's a lot, you never actually know people ever, but you definitely don't know them on television. And there's so much, the producers are giving us exactly the story that they want to portray. And they wanted to portray him as someone who did sexual things that were outside of the norm that his partner found strange, rather than using this opportunity as like a hey, let's talk about boundaries. Like, let's talk about consent. Let's talk about pleasure. Like, there are so many opportunities to have those kinds of discussions. But ultimately, like, the producers want to give the viewer that satisfaction drama of like, he cheated in this like really bizarre way through text messages. And we're not even going to talk about how disgusting they are because kinks are gross and BDSM is nasty. And like that, it's just such a missed opportunity.
Yeah. And Netflix honestly kind of did Monica disservice too, because she's not looking great now with online reception with, she's been called, saying that she's kink shaming and
really? I haven't really seen that part of it.
I haven't seen that either. Yeah.
I saw she did an interview. I saw her clip with, I think it was Nick Viall's podcast, where she came up and she was like, I'm getting a lot of like kink shaming. I want to be clear as to here. So I found the text messages, blah, 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 like trying to give her line of thinking and kind of insinuate that people have been coming for her. But yeah, I think Netflix, didn't help her with how they portrayed her coming down hard on him with the cheating. But as you said, it was paired with the kink shaming as well, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, I think like, she's caught up in this moment where like she feels very betrayed. She like very much didn't see this coming. She was like, you're going to shake my dad's hand next weekend. Like she's in shock, right? So like, I don't really, I don't say that it's her fault at all for kind of reacting in the way that she did. I just think that like, I don't know, like what would it be like if there was like a black title card after that scene that was just like, something about like kinks are like up to consenting adults. Like if you want to learn more about healthy kink behavior, go to this fucking website,
go
like
to sexedwithdanielle.com. Yeah.
Just go listen to this. That's right. This is just a selfish plug. But just like there's just like, it's so simple in my mind in order to do like a slight teaching moment that they have millions of viewers captivated and they don't do it because what's their benefit, right? Like how does it behoove Netflix to do that? It doesn't. So yeah, it's just a bummer that like it was really intertwined and also major bummer that he was being so sketchy. And then he was like, I did this sleep study drunk and I deleted the text because I didn't even like, dude, it like you signed up for this television thing. Like this is you have cameras taking you around. Like she's asking to see your texts. You look bad right now is kind of like the end result of that.
Yeah. Oof. What you were saying kind of made me think also of season 1 in terms of missed opportunities with Diamond and Carlton.
Oh my God.
Where he was bi and she was like throwing the ring in the pool.
Yeah. And she got a lot of flack in the end for people saying she was discriminatory against him, biphobic. And but as you said, she's kind of in the heat of the moment having this reaction, but then Netflix kind of misses an opportunity to have like a teaching moment or like a sit down or do something with that moment, it's like kind of made me think of that.
And it seems, speaking of those conversations, we would love to know from your perspective. Steven was giving hints to Monica, right? Like, I'm okay with pegging. I'm fine. But he also has no inflections when he makes a joke. So we also have no idea if he was joking or not or what the case was.
It seemed serious to me. I don't know. I think he was kind of giving her details as to like, I'm into anal. Are you into anal?
Yep.
Yep. Treating me like a piece of meat. He said that like 5 times.
Yeah, he did say that a lot.
It's like almost coded speak for the things he really wants to
like,
be.
He's like, I want to be a sub. He's like, I want to be a sub.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that's what he wants, but to me, when he's saying that over and over again, I'm just like, say what you mean. Like, this is an opportunity to have a conversation with your partner about like the kinds of things that you like. And we'll get to Ramses and Marissa, but I just feel like there's so much there with that as well.
What do you think those kind of kink conversations should look like?
The tricky
especially in a new relationship too.
Yeah.
In a brand new relationship. You're getting to know each other. Yeah.
This is exactly it. I feel like Love is Blind would have so many more legs to stand if like they filmed the first month of their relationship and then they had to walk down the aisle like a year later. Like, obviously the drama's not there, but the reason why this like inherently doesn't work, like the premise is not love is blind. The premise is, can you get married after 1 month of knowing somebody? And to me, like, yes, love is blind. These people do love each other. Are they ready for marriage 1 month after meeting somebody, regardless of if you met in person or through a wall? Absolutely not. People need time to get to know each other, to have these kinds of conversations. In terms of your question of how in the beginning of a relationship, you know, do you talk about kink? A lot of people don't have the tools to be able to talk openly and honestly about what they like sexually. And that's because, especially in our American society, we're not talked about this usually with our parents growing up. We're not taught this in school, depending on the state that you're in. We know that you're not really getting the information that you need always from the internet, although there are great resources. It's hard to decipher between them, right? And so we grow up not really having the ability to have these conversations with our partners. And the reality is that especially with kink, especially with BDSM, power dynamics, those kinds of things, people are very ashamed to have those kinds of conversations, even with their partners of years and years and years. So of course, within the first month of a relationship, you're not necessarily going to be able to have those conversations because you need trust in order to have that. And how can you have trust with someone that you just met, right? And so ultimately, I think before kind of having conversations around details around what you like sexually, I think it's just important to open the floor with how do you like talking about sex in general? Kind of back up and just ask, like, do you talk about sex with your partners? And just see what they say. Because if their answer is like, yes, absolutely. You know, I talk about STI testing. We talk about condoms. We talk about birth control. Like, see where they're at. Because if that is where they're coming from foundationally, then maybe the next conversation can be around, okay, well, let's talk about pleasure. Let's talk about toys in the bedroom. Let's talk about kinks, you know? But if you ask that first question of, are you used to talking about sex? And your partner says, no, that's like super weird for me, and I'd rather just do it rather than talk about it, really consider if you want to choose that person as your partner.
Yes. Right.
Because you're going to have to do a lot of teaching to them, and you're going to have a lot of patience, and that's up to you. If you feel like you can have that conversation and have them learn and kind of go through the motions, and you have that time and capacity, if you're not as booked and busy to be able to do that, then you should do that. But I think like as adults, we should figure out where the other person is before we kind of delve into the harder topics.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you gotta roll it all the way back, just like back
when
you even feel comfortable talking about sex before it even get to kinks. Forget that.
Right.
Like,
and clearly, bringing it back to LIB, like Steven was very comfortable talking about sex. And it seemed like Monica wasn't really, wasn't comfortable with the kinds of acts that he was talking about. And we didn't see on camera. Maybe she said something off camera that was like, hey, I'm a little uncomfortable with like the kinds of things you're saying because I don't know if they're true, and I don't know, I'm not comfortable doing those acts. Like, how can we meet in the middle, right?
In the
like
middle,
sexual pleasure and like sexual acts need to have two consenting adults. And maybe you're not willing to do one sexual act, but maybe you're willing to do another. Or maybe this is a good opportunity that you can experience during masturbation. Or maybe, you know, there's so many different ways that we can have each other's needs met and our own needs met. But if you're not willing to have a conversation about it, then you're not going to be able to be open and honest.
Right. This actually brings up some interesting points. I think the first one is that, do you think it's possible for these people to have these conversations when they're still in the pods and they don't see each other?
I mean, I don't know what the fuck happens there. Clearly people fall in love enough even to pretend to propose to somebody. Like, maybe they're genuine, maybe they're not. It's really hard for me as someone who hasn't seen, you know, this hours and hours of footage of what they're talking about. But yeah, for sure. I think that like asking the question to a new partner, especially in this kind of experiment of, what do you think about sex? Like, what's a priority for you with sex? How do you feel about sex toys? Like, asking them kind of a slew of questions and then also being willing to answer them to see how compatible you are sexually. Because even though we're not talking about it, it matters to a lot of people whether or not you're compatible sexually. And sexual health and sexual pleasure and happiness is one kind of piece of your overall pie of the way that you connect to yourself and to your partner. And so absolutely, they should be talking about these things just like they should be talking about religion, just like they should be talking about, their relationships with their parents, just like they should be talking about their career goals. Like all of these should be in the same level of priority, and sexual health and pleasure are just not seen like that because we're so uncomfortable talking about it.
Yes. And I think too, with even the way we look, I think Steven would have to describe, like, listen, I'm a 6'2" big giant man, but I like to get bent over sometimes. I think that would be a really interesting conversation for Monica to have in the back, but also he would have to describe how he looks, which may defeat the purpose of the show.
Right. I mean, I think there are ways that you can say that though without describing your looks, of like, I typically am seen as a very powerful person and seen as a very dominant person. And just because that's true, that doesn't mean that that's how I feel sexually. And like, I don't know. I just feel like he almost got there, right? Like he kind of was telling us that he liked these things and he was open about it. And we were like, ooh, right there. And it was just like, not the closer didn't happen of like Monica of like Monica being like, so let me get this straight. Like, are you saying that you want to be the sub to my dom? Like, let's talk about that. Like,
yes.
And would Netflix have aired that? I don't know. I would have
loved
so.
it if they did. That would have been so dope.
It would have been great. I mean, I think that they did air. I mean, this is not having to do with sexual health, but that whole conversation that Ramses and Marissa had around like the military industrial complex, I was shocked that they aired that whole conversation. I was just like, wow, we're talking about real fucking shit here. Like, this is good. Like, this is like 5 full minutes of an uninterrupted conversation that feels very genuine. And I was really craving something like that to happen, which maybe it's coming. It seems like we got a teaser about that birth control thing that Marissa was saying. So I'm sure again we'll get into that, but
I feel like I'm wondering if people with kinks, if Love is Blind is a safe show for them to even go on, because or even not even just Love is Blind, any dating show, because as you said, you need trust, right? Steven clearly felt, particularly with something like this, there's a lot of shame. Steven clearly, we think, had a lot of shame, which is why he was kind of dropping hints instead of saying it outright. He knows millions of people are watching him on TV. Should people with kinks go on shows like these? Is it a safe space for them?
Does everybody have kinks though?
I was just going to say, I think not everyone.
Out of the norm kinks.
Yes.
I guess that's what I want to say. Out of the norm kinks.
I think the question is rather, should people feel comfortable divulging their kinks that aren't necessarily, everyone kind of in our mainstream society has heard about spanking now. We've all heard about role play. Like, these are kinks that like are kinks, but are more common kinks than other kinks. And so I do think the question is like most people like have some sort of proclivity to something sexual. They may not have a kink, but maybe they have something that they like that isn't considered vanilla. And so I think that because that is just what the population looks like, people are going on these shows who have these proclivities, but should they feel the need to divulge that information on camera? I don't think so. I don't think that that's like a necessity. I just think that if you're already kind of doing that, then why not bring it home and say the real thing that you're thinking, which is the reason why I make jokes about it is because I'm into it. Like I just wish there was like a, if you're going to joke about it, and if you're going to say like, treat me like a piece of meat, this is kind of like a PG version of saying like, I want to be submissive to you. But who knows? I don't know him, right?
Yeah,
like, I don't know what his kinks are. We're all kind of making it up, but I do think it's kind of fodder for an open and honest conversation around kinks and around BDSM and things like that.
For sure. Okay, let's talk Marissa and Ramses.
Yes, thank God. Very
Another
excited.
Couple with some sex stuff going on. So our first question. So Marissa and Ramses, they had sex very early on in the honeymoon. I think they like beat the record. And we were joking that they like had sex on the plane. It seemed like they really just got straight to it. And we're seemingly in a honeymoon state, right? Until they started talking politics and the military, then things start to get a little rocky. We know a lot of people to abstain from sex because they believe it clouds their judgment, particularly when it comes to relationships. Ashley, and she's on the show, she talked about being celibate for I think 2 years. As far as Ramses and Marissa goes, could having sex as early as they did, and if the sex was good, like they were sexually compatible, could it have clouded their judgment or led Marissa and Ramses to believe that they're now compatible as a couple, which we're kind of seeing now might not be true?
Oh, that's interesting. I haven't really thought about that framework before. I think that as a sex educator who engages in pleasure-focused, medically accurate, non-judgmental sex ed, I don't think it's my brand to ever tell two people who are consenting adults that they shouldn't have sex if they don't want to have sex. I think that, again, sex is a large part of the way that we connect. I think that for some people, maybe they might extrapolate their sexual chemistry to other parts of their relationship. But I do think that both things could be happening at once, meaning sex could be happening as well as deep conversations around, hey, what are our goals, our wants, our needs? How are we compatible? I think it's nice to know, check on the sexual compatibility, because I do think that for some people, maybe they wait to have sex and maybe they have conversations around things and maybe they're compatible in those ways, but maybe they're not compatible sexually. And so I think having those conversations as well as engaging in whatever sexual acts that you're comfortable with. And I guess this is an asterisk here that sex does not only mean penis and vagina sex. Sex can mean touching, it can mean kissing, it can mean oral, it can be, all sorts of things. And so I think that especially for straight couples, we have this idea of like, you're not having sex unless the penis is in the vagina. And as a sex educator, it's really my duty to tell you that that's not true. There's all sorts of sex that you can be having, and you don't have to engage in all sexual acts if you feel like uncomfortable doing that. So I think my full answer is that it really depends on the couple. And if one person out of the couple says, I'm actually not really comfortable having sex yet, and here's why, it is the other person's in the couple responsibility to say, I respect your decision, and I would love to talk more about this at a later time if you want to check in again. Like if the person is saying, I am not ready, then it's really important for the other person to respect that decision.
Yeah, I'm really curious what other conversations Ramses and Marissa were having on the honeymoon, because they were having a blast on the honeymoon. In my head, I'm like, oh, they are just like totally sexually compatible. They're having fun.
They also do kind of look alike, which people
they do.
Her mom said that,
sibling or couple type vibe.
Yes, dating her siblings. Yeah,
for sure. But yeah, they seem to be kind of in this like la la land, and then it's like they woke up and they're like, oh wait, politics and military, let's talk about it. Like now we're like 2 weeks in talking about getting married and shit. Like what?
Yeah, which is like, what did they talk about in the pods? If not her, if that's her entire professional life and she grew up on bases, what expectation do you have? I mean,
did he have?
I think it's really tough. I think that, and we learned that he's from Venezuela, which is like, he kind of says like, we have been under the thumb of American imperialism. Like these are real experiences that people have. And I think it was a very good thing that they are talking about this so openly. And at the end of the day, like it's possible that they're not compatible. And I think that's fully okay. Like, I think they are talking about those things, but I think you're right in that, like, maybe they did have those conversations earlier, but again, the producers were like, let's save this till the end. Let's save this drama till the end.
Yeah, that could be. And just make them look like they're having so much fun and the sex is good. And they're just like so focused on that. Yeah. So Ramses and Marissa bringing up a very interesting conversation around contraception.
Yes.
They are doing the pull-out method, it seems, which I imagine is still not a recommended form of real contraception.
Pull and pray is sometimes what they call it.
Okay. We learn Marissa doesn't want to get back on birth control. Ramses is very anti-condoms. He says that sex is not enjoyable for him with condoms. From my point of view, I'm going to speak very personally because I know Justine thinks a little differently. Mm-hmm. For me, him strapping on a condom seems so much more low stakes and easier than her getting on birth control. So I immediately, when he said his response, I just found that as an excuse. I was like, this is bullshit. Can you talk to us about this whole sex with condoms is unenjoyable thing that we hear a lot from men in particular? And now in today, the year 2024, I'm sure there's been a lot of technological advances in the world of condoms to kind of combat that sentiment. Can you just tell us more about this?
I would be honored. This is actually what I've been dying to talk about this entire time.
Great.
Yeah, because like backing up, this conversation also kind of happened in a previous season of Love is Blind. So I'm glad that we're able to revisit this in a more sincere way, that it's come up multiple times now.
Yeah.
Because, okay, so there are a lot of kind of pieces to your question. I guess I should start with this idea that if one partner has had poor experiences on birth control, for example, and I, as a sex educator, have read the science, read the data, know that birth control does work for many people, and there is a method most likely out there for most people. I am someone who has tried 11 different birth control methods, like 8 types of the pill. I've been on the hormonal IUD. Whoa. I've tried this thing called Phexxi, which is like a non-hormonal gel that you insert right into the vagina before sex. Yeah. I have tried the NuvaRing, right? So I am someone who has studied this and also has tried them. And the reason why I tried so many wasn't for fun. It was because on every single one, I had bad side effects. And so on certain forms of the pill, I had really bad headaches. On the NuvaRing, I had, such bad discharge that I felt like I was peeing my pants constantly. On Phexxi, it was really painful. It stung. So there are all these reasons why people decide to not continue on with their birth control method. And we should assume that, especially with women, where historically we are not believed for our pain, for our symptoms, if your partner who you love is saying to you, this is actually not just a little less pleasurable, but actively bad for me, it is your partner's job to say, that sounds like it fucking sucks for you. So I will go ahead and experience a little less pleasure so you don't have to experience pain, right? It's like a very simple thing in that way. That's kind of baseline what I want to say about this.
Okay.
Some people with penises and men do say, okay, condoms are less pleasurable for me. But my question to them is, are you using lube? What kinds of condoms are you using? Are you using ones where you're kind of experimenting to see what feels good for you? Are you able to maybe consider that oral or touching or other things can happen before or after sex to make it more pleasurable? Like, again, there's this Dr. Lori Mintz, who's a professor and, a sex educator and researcher, talks about this staircase method model that we've been taught, where PV sex is at the top, right? And we really need to break down that idea, because in so many people's minds, everything else before that is to get to that pivotal moment. And in mainstream porn, typically, who are we seeing gets the most pleasure? It's men. There's the idea of the cum shot for a reason, right? It's like the release of ejaculation from a man's penis is like the payoff. And so because we're taught all these messages, Ramses then is having come to this conversation with all of these cultural norms, all of this experience with porn, all of this expectation around friends, conversations around who is responsible for getting the most pleasure. And that's where he's coming from. Okay, and so it is his job to kind of check that idea of, I'm going to get a little less pleasure, so I don't even want to entertain this conversation, right? There's not even cool, let's try that for 3 months and then let's check in about it.
Right.
It is really important that we pay attention to our partners when they say, I don't want to do this because of this experience that I had, plain and simple. And then we can kind of, again, talk about all the things that are surrounding a conversation like this.
Yeah, that's so interesting. 'Cause that's I was immediately rubbed the wrong way during that conversation.
No pun intended, I assume.
Yeah, no pun intended. because he seemed to center his pleasure so much. And it wasn't even a question about, he didn't even really ask her, why don't you want to go on birth control? At least we didn't see.
He wasn't even, maybe we didn't see it, but it didn't seem like he was curious, which is so important. Why are you not curious about your partner saying, I don't want to go on birth control? Like, are you assuming that she just is being, I'm being dramatic, selfish? Like, no, birth control, especially the pill, I have to take something at the same exact time every day just because you don't feel like going from a 10 to an 8 pleasure scale. Like, how about you go fuck yourself? Literally.
Yes, thank you, Danielle. Yes.
Like, if you love your partner, you should want them to have pleasure. And part of that actually is if you're going to use a condom, there's less likelihood of unintended pregnancy and transmission of STIs. And so when we are able to wear a condom and be a little more certain that we're working to prevent an unwanted pregnancy, for example, you're going to have more pleasure because you're going to be less anxious. Stressed. Exactly. Which is really something that is not talked about enough. It's not just the actual act of preventing pregnancy or STI transmission. It's preventing that stress and that worry that comes along with that, because 50% of pregnancies in the US are unplanned. 50%.
That is so many.
That is ridiculous, everybody. That is crazy.
50.
Is that due to lack of sex education, you think?
It's a combination, I think, of lack of sex education, lack of resources, lack of birth control, lack of understanding people's bodies, when they ovulate, when you're able to get sex. Because honestly, many people that I know, I'm in my early 30s, are trying to get pregnant. And it feels hard for them, even when you're trying. So imagine how much lack of information that has to be out there in order for half of the pregnancies in the US to be unintended.
That is wild.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not
sorry,
great.
I'm not great.
We can improve, I think.
Yes, we can
vastly improve. Yeah. I think speaking of that, Ramses says that conversation is, quote, not something guys ever have the pressure of having to think about. We know that technically birth control is the responsibility of both partners. You just expressed a lot of different kind of metaphors that I know are going to stick with our listeners after this episode. I'm even thinking of like what is first base and what is a home run when it comes to sex. Exactly. A home run is when a man comes. So
exactly.
And penis and vagina, right?
Right.
Is birth control strictly a women's issue when we get down to it? Like, for real, if we're being for real, is birth control a women's issue? Is this our burden to carry? Even if you're with a man with a dangly earring and 2 dangling braids and claims that
what's
he
up
is
with
like
the braids? Can we talk? All right, we
so progressive, and he's just wearing tight pants and looks like Lenny Kravitz in 1987.
I know. Her mom really called him out for his outfit. She was like, "I hated your outfit."
But he's to me, he's like cosplaying as a very progressive man, and in this conversation, he really exposed himself.
Yeah. Right. I think you bring up a really good point, and this is okay. So my mom is an OBGYN, and so this is like very much. I have her on my podcast every season. We talk about all sorts of things that she kind of experiences for her patients. She's a menopause specialist. She talks about pain during sex, all these things, and so she has always kind of taught me and shared with my listeners that unfortunately, yes, it is the responsibility of the person with the uterus, the woman, to be the person in charge of their own reproductive freedom. And it's also their right to say, okay, well, if you don't want to have a conversation around the potential impact of having unprotected sex, aka us having a baby together, which is either if I live in, this is very real right now. We're recording this at a time where reproductive rights and freedom and access is on the line. And like, if you live in a state where you accidentally get pregnant and you feel like you don't have the access to get an abortion or having a right to that care, like what are you supposed to do? Like this is really truly like your trajectory of how your life is going to turn out is in these politicians' hands. And I want to be very clear that abortion pills and medication abortion are available in all 50 states. Like I don't know if that's something you guys are comfortable with, but like in the show notes, we can get people kind of the, access to the care they need before something happens in their state. It's always important to have access to that when you need it, or to have plan B, emergency contraception, to take within 72 hours of unprotected sex. And so all that being said, yeah, go ahead.
I have a quick question about Plan B. Is there a Plan B that's available for people who are over 175 pounds?
Okay, really great question. So Plan B should still be taken if that's your only option. You can buy Plan B on Amazon, same day delivery. You can go to CVS. You can go wherever you are able to get Plan B. But you bring up a good point, Justine, in that Plan B is less effective when you're over 175 pounds. Does that mean you shouldn't take it? No, you should absolutely still take it. It just means it's less effective. But there is a prescriptive emergency contraception called Ella, ELLA, and you can chat with your primary care provider, or you can kind of Google like Ella prescription near me, and then you can kind of find like a list of providers who would maybe provide it for you. And that, I believe, is most effective for people who are up to 190 pounds. Okay. But and it's more effective than Plan B. Plan B. But the most effective emergency contraception option, which in my opinion is fucked up, is an IUD. To get an IUD inserted within
72 hours?
I believe it's 5 days, but maybe I'll get back to you on that. I think it's within 5 days of unprotected sex. And it's like, okay, cool. I'm just going to go get an IUD implanted in my uterus. Right?
So it's I'm 192 pounds.
Right.
So again, like Plan B, still effective, just becomes less effective. And it's most effective the sooner you take it after unprotected sex. So like, say you have an oopsie, if you're someone who's, 190 pounds, then it's important that if you can't get Ella, then you just take a Plan B. And before you do that, you can also talk to your primary care provider or your gyno and say, hey, this is a situation. This is how much I weigh. What would you recommend? Urgent. This is an emergency. Like, I need you to pay attention to this message, right? But again, there's Plan B, least effective, but most available option. Ella, medium availability, but more effective. And unfortunately, the least available but most effective is getting an IUD inserted.
Wow. Oof, Lord. See? Fat phobia affects everybody. This is crazy. Anyway, continue with your answer, Danielle.
Okay. No, that's okay. I can't even remember. We were talking about Ramses, and you were saying this thing about him cosplaying as
a progressive
man. And we were, okay. I was talking about what my mom had said, which is, as an OBGYN, she says, like, the person with the uterus or the woman, unfortunately, it is up to them to bear the burden because it's their reproductive journey, right? Ultimately, they're the ones who, if they get pregnant, need to then decide if they're going to have an abortion or if they're going to keep the pregnancy and what happens from there, right? And so because of that, yes, ultimately, the decisions do and the the wherewithal and the research does need to eventually fall on that person. But if you're in a loving partnership, shouldn't your partner want to address those things with you? Like, if they don't, and if they don't really care about your reproductive rights or your reproductive freedom, I think it's important to ask why you're with them. And I think it's important to consider, do I trust this person enough? If something really hard happens and we do get pregnant, what is the decision that we're going to make? Are we going to make it together? Are you going to bounce and not be involved at all? Like, what's going to happen here?
Yeah, that's a good point. In a partnership, in a loving partnership, it shouldn't feel like a burden to one person.
Yes, it should feel like both people are responsible for the acts, because that person couldn't have gotten pregnant without the guy. Right?
Exactly.
It is a joint effort.
Yeah. So more on Ramses and this cosplaying. Great. So he calls himself progressive. There's a lot of men out there who are like, I'm liberal, I'm a feminist, I'm progressive, I believe in, women's rights to do whatever. And yet they still don't know. They're still in conversations with their partners saying shit like this. How do men educate themselves on birth control and the impacts on a woman's body in particular? I feel like Ramses, like a lot of men, just don't really understand. They know we take a pill, we know we go get an IUD inserted. That's kind of it. They don't really know the impacts and effects it could really have on a woman's body, and why some women say, I'm not getting back on birth control. It's not for me. Yes. How can they become a true ally to us in this particular topic?
First and foremost, listen to your partner with what they're saying. Believe them. Listen to them and ask them even if their partner can share any resources, right? Because everyone has a different way that they interact with this information. There might be one article or one experience that your partner has had that's like, you have to read this. It really blew my mind, right? So maybe they have something that they want to share with you. Secondly, Planned Parenthood, Planned Parenthood, Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood has an amazing online guide as to everything and anything that you could want to know about birth control, impacts on your body, symptoms, experiences that you might be having, right? And I think it's really critical that whoever's listening, right? If your partner is a man, or if you're a man who's listening, like after this episode, just go to plannedparenthood.com, set your timer for 30 minutes and just read and just see what it's like on the other side of this information, because unless you actually set aside time to go to a trusted source like Planned Parenthood, you're not going to be able to really understand the information. It has to be within you to go and read and watch videos and search for articles, right? So Planned Parenthood is such a good one because people know it, people trust it, and the information that's on there is medically accurate. It is science-backed. It's written by doctors, written by medical health professionals. And so if you're able to go on there and just search Planned Parenthood birth control, you can learn more. They have like an entire section around each different birth control method. And it says kind of how you take it, what it's like, possible side effects and symptoms. And that's definitely like the first thing that you want to do after you actually hear and listen to your partner and ask them if they found any information super helpful.
Okay. Thank you. Read, people.
Yeah.
Just read.
Read. Watch videos.
Free resources. Yeah.
Free. For free.
For free. Oh, well, speaking of free, somebody who's living free, Nick and Hannah. So Hannah
nice transition.
That was good. Impressive.
So it seems like from our perspective and our very limited conversations that we've seen from this couple, Hannah wants a man to at least pull his weight in the house. Someone who can at least go 50-50 with her. Nick has been living at home with his parents, chilling, doing fine, not doing seemingly anything. And it seems like Hannah is more financially responsible. It seems like she's providing a sense of leadership in this relationship. And the conversation where Hannah sat him down and talked about stocks and cleaning and grocery bills, it seemed very much like a mother-son dynamic, which is one of the most unsexy dynamics that there can be in a relationship.
Sure.
Can you roll back from that dynamic? And how do you get back from mother-son to partner and partner?
This one's hard. I think like
stressed, Danielle.
I'm really stressed about this. I mean, again, I don't know these people, but like the way that Hannah talks to him makes me cringe. Like I think
really,
yes, I think that what she's saying is valid. I think how she's saying it is to embarrass him. I think the way she's saying it is to say, like, you know nothing. I have to teach you everything. Yeah. How embarrassing for you. And we see, gets defensive, which, like, also isn't great. He's like, well, how much do you know about sports? She's like, what are you talking about? Like, clearly there's miscommunications about, like, the way that they are saying things to each other. And I think, like, they're separate issues, right? Like, I think his financial illiteracy is an issue. Can it be taught? Like, yeah, I think it can be taught, like if he wants to learn. I think that her embarrassing him on national television and saying like, you don't know what a stock is? Like, you don't like, you just live with your mommy. Like you're 28 years old. Do you want to be on a phone bill? Like there's a way that she can say that where she can get her point across without sounding like a dick. Like, I just think that the way that she says that, it would be really beneficial to her even to say like, hey, it's actually important to me as your partner that I know that you can handle your own finances. What do you think about that? Like, because if he responded in a way that was like, I agree, I have some growth to do, that would be really different than if he said, no, I'm cool, kind of just like hanging at my parents and letting them deal with it. Like, then she can make a decision for herself as to like whether or not she wants to stay in this rather than like bully him into whatever she views as the right partner. So like, I'm with you in that a mother-son dynamic is not helpful. She shouldn't be trying to save him. He should want, to have success on his own. But like he's not a bum, right? Like we're seeing he is a real estate agent. He's an ex-pro football player. Like maybe he still lives with his parents, but does that necessarily mean that because he's not financially super literate that he like isn't wanting or willing to learn that? I don't know. I just think that like I just don't like the way that she bullies him. It like makes me uncomfortable. It feels like quite toxic.
Wow.
Yeah, do you have a different opinion?
I only do after kind of revisiting it one more time because Hannah is the oldest sibling. And I relate to that eldest daughter attitude so much.
I'm just like, get your shit together.
Get your shit together, but also y'all would be nowhere without me. Like there's that a very like contradictory identity that you live with as the oldest daughter specifically. And it seemed like her little brother was commiserating with Nick on how mean Hannah was to them.
Right.
Because of that dynamic. But she feels like that probably because she's had to feel like that for a lot of different instances in her life. And seeing her youngest brother, how young he was.
He was tiny.
Like, oh, you done some raising.
That's
really why you like this.
But you know what? I was surprised at like how much I liked her parents. I don't know.
Yeah, her parents were great.
They were great.
I was like, wait a minute, they raised her? Like, I don't know this person at all. It's just what they're choosing to portray her as kind of, the villain here. Everyone has a role to play, and Netflix has portrayed her as kind of the villain here intentionally. But her parents seemed pretty cool to me. I don't know. Yeah. I liked them. It seemed like they were genuine when she made that joke about like sucking the toe, and they were like, Hannah, what? Come on. Like they seem like, I don't know. Again, I don't know them, but just like a little bit more genuine than I was kind of anticipating based on who we've seen Hannah to be.
I feel like, did Hannah say something around at 18 she's been on her own? Like her parents, she's been doing her own thing.
She said, I've been on my own since I was 18, which is like, maybe that's true. She said her old job was in medical sales. Like, I don't know. I don't know.
Remember.
Some medical tech sales, something. I was like, oh, okay. Are you like I'm picturing like people going from office to office, like selling equipment and kind of like making high commissions. I don't know. Maybe she has made a lot of money or feels like
started early,
Yeah, but like all of that money and like all of that success doesn't really mean anything if you're wanting a partner and you're bullying them into like being financially literate. And
more literate than
she chose him, so like she has an ability here. Again, conversations they should have had earlier on before they fucking knelt before a wall.
Yeah, that's my issue with her. Knelt before a wall. That is my issue with Hannah. Is like he didn't lie about living with his parents,
right?
Like you did know that part, so you can
and
make
his parents seem really nice too.
His parents seem lovely, and you can make a lot of inferences from someone who lives with their parents that he's probably not going to be that good at keeping up his house. He's not going to be that good of a partner with those basic like household responsibility things. That she's kind of now acting like it's a whole surprise to her, and it's like, you kind of should have known this, I would say.
Yeah, and kind of similar to like the whole thing with Steven, like he kind of, like is like embarrassing himself a little on national television by being like, yeah, I just kind of started with this realtor thing, and like, I don't know, I'm not really making that much money. I'm like on my also, like, I am an independent adult, and I just got married, and I'm also still on my mom's phone plan. Like, I don't know. There's just like random shit where you're just like, okay, we're making a lot of assumptions about like people's ability to be independent, successful adults by like pointing to these few markers that show like you're a bum. When it's like, okay, maybe he is. We don't know, but all we see are these conversations. And I think tone is everything when we're especially when we're talking about money, which is a huge thing that people have arguments over.
Yeah, for sure. So more with Nick and Hannah and their dynamic, we see another scene where Nick asks Hannah to help make pasta, right? Help make dinner.
Oh, that was really rough to watch.
It was a rough watch. We see him go into the fridge to find the pasta. We see him complaining about not knowing how to boil water. And he seemed to very much like act dumb, and we call this weaponizing incompetence, right? Strategically avoiding responsibility by pretending like you don't know what you're doing.
Yes.
This is a breeding ground for resentment. Hannah kind of shrugged it off and was like, I'll just do it, you know?
Yeah.
We don't talk too much about Hannah and Nick's sex life, but I'm curious if this idea of weaponizing incompetence, a woman kind of just like shrugging it, fine, I'll do it myself, being a breeding for resentment and like a breeding ground for bad sex. How does this impact the sex life of relationships?
Guys, I almost forgot about the pasta scene. I mean, I have to, again, once again, like, he is embarrassing himself on national television by showing that he doesn't know how to boil pasta. Like, that's bad. Like, that's, again, just for Hannah to decide, am I okay with being with someone who doesn't know these things? You're either okay with it, and you like can teach in a nice way, or you say bye-bye. Like, you don't need to bully people into feeling so stupid, right? But again, there are these cameras and you're trying to perform. We could do a whole episode on like the performance aspect of Love is Blind.
Yes.
But to your question, I do think that we see on the honeymoon that like they had sex, but Nick doesn't want to talk about it on camera. So I'm kind of curious because from her body language and kind of the way she's being flirty and cheeky about it, it seemed like they enjoyed having sex with each other. We didn't, we've seen her kind of be rude to him much of the time, and she was not rude to him when they were when she was like, we haven't had sex, right? Wink, wink. Like, it seems like they were being playful. It seems like they might have had chemistry. But I think what you're alluding to is the idea that if someone doesn't know how to boil pasta on their own and their partner says, fine, I'll just do it myself, is that translating to orgasms, or is that translating to pleasure? And I think that, like, the orgasm gap exists for a reason, right? Where, in straight sex, if 100 couples have sex, 95 of the men will orgasm, whereas 70% roughly of the women will have reached orgasm. And that number is different for 2 gay men and 2 lesbian women. The gap is much lower. And so it's not necessarily that women are having trouble orgasming. It's that men are having trouble prioritizing women's orgasms. And so I think that with that question, it is important for us to consider, like, are we in a straight heterosexual relationship prioritizing each other and making sure that we are prioritizing pleasure? And at the same time, again, how do we kind of decouple the idea of orgasm as like the ultimate winner with all the pleasure that can come along? Because reaching orgasm can be a lot of pressure for people. And so if we remove that pressure and just say, what would it feel like if we just kissed right now, or if we cuddled, or if I fingered you, or if I did these other sexual acts where you don't have to orgasm, right? Where we don't see that as the ultimate goal, but we just focus on the pleasure. Like, how much more connected would we feel to our partners if we just prioritize pleasure for one another?
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting point, and something that, if we don't see it again with Hannah and Nick, but it would be interesting for them to have that conversation, because Hannah does not see this man as an adult.
Right.
Yeah. So for her to have penis and vagina sex with him probably feels uncomfortable for that reason. She doesn't think he's an adult man in her head.
Right.
Because
but what's kind of interesting is maybe their relationship in the bedroom is such that she likes to be submissive and he dominates her there.
Yep.
We have no clue. Again, like, it's very possible that that's the place where she is like, I am dominant in every other part of our life, and you are now dominant in the bedroom, and like that's a very common trope, right? Like type A women being like, in the boardroom, like, I'm a fucking baller and I'm type A, and then in the bedroom I want you to tell me what to do. And, there's also nothing wrong with that. Like, if that is the dynamic that you want to set up in your relationship that feels good for both of you, then, like, have at it.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if you could have that dynamic with somebody who you don't think is an adult.
Who you fundamentally think is a man-child.
Yeah, she does. Especially after meeting his mom. I know she does.
I know. And she really, but what was so weird? She was so nice at that dinner.
Oh, yeah.
She did
brought
great.
all
She
these
performed well.
Again, performance, right? She brought all these presents. She was like, I'm so happy to be here. Like, just there, you didn't get any sort of sense that she had been bullying him an hour prior or whatever it was.
Not at all.
Oh my gosh. Well, our last question, just the one around heterosexual men in general. We see a lot of men lying all over the place on this season. Nick has a lot of like little white lies. He lied about his appearance. He lied about living in a man cave with a pool table.
Oh, right.
He lied about.
She really puts him on blast, by the way. She's like, here, is this what you were talking about?
He said that he loves to cook. He can't even boil water. Tyler has a whole family. Steven has all these like.
Wait, can we talk about the Tyler thing? Because I feel like that was overblown and I'd love to tell you why.
Oh, tell us. Yeah.
Okay. So I think this is another missed opportunity here where we are getting at least a little bit of information, which I don't know where this is going to lead, but all the information that we know up until this point is that Tyler was a sperm donor for a family and helped them conceive. Is that correct? Am I correct in saying that?
Well, that's the story that Tyler has been telling.
Oh, you think that's not true?
That the internet has dug up.
Oh, no. I haven't looked at any of those
things.
Sorry, Danielle.
They have matching Christmas photos. They went to JCPenney and took the family portrait all together.
He's like very involved
sperm
in the
donor
kids'
relationship.
lives.
Very involved.
Why? Can't we have anything good?
I know. No, we can't. We're clearly not allowed.
Can we? However, I think that the internet loves to sleuth, but I'd love to consider the idea that he was telling the truth, which we know that he wasn't, but in this case, but I think that it is important for us to just put pause on like the internet sleuthing for a second and consider what the producers again are trying to set this up as, which is that like, this is bad if you have, donated sperm. Like, we're going to make this into a drama because inherently, I don't think this is a bad thing. I think that we need to understand. And again, maybe he should have told her this earlier. Sure. Maybe he should. Yes, absolutely. He should have communicated this and been honest. But I think when we're demonizing people for something that they are doing inherently, maybe not in his case, maybe, but in other cases, it seems, where they're trying to help other people start a family, that is a conversation. It's not a thing where we're demonizing somebody for donating sperm, because lots of people do this. A lot of people, it's a financial thing. A lot of people do this in order to pay their bills and in order, like it's an easy thing for people to do. And so, yeah, that sucks that it seems like not the case for him. But in the moment, I was disappointed in like the way, but maybe this is foreshadowing. I'm so confused. I don't even know how to process this information.
I know, because we have seen this conversation before on Love is Blind, and it was very minor. You probably didn't even catch it with Nancy and Bartice.
She donated her eggs.
She donated like 8 eggs.
Oh, wow.
To families. And she was like, I ain't their mama. I don't know them. And that was it. That was the conversation. So there was no demonizing. We see Tyler with his hood up, quiet, shameful. The music, violins playing in the back.
Is the implication that he does have another family, or what's the deal?
That's the photo evidence. If you just look at the photos, he
just has a family.
Yeah,
I don't know if he has a family, but the woman that he donated his sperm to, he very much knows and has a relationship with her. And it seems like he's telling Ashley that he like donated the sperm and boom. But they've found pictures of him in Christmas outfits with the kids, him with the woman and the kids.
Do you think that they're exes, or do you think that
I'm not
unclear?
Unsure.
Okay, I'm not feeling as bad anymore. Hold on. The fact that he's lying is bad. Moot point blank, that's it. Period. Right? I still don't think that we should see it as such a bad thing necessarily. Again, it's up to Ashley, it's up to people to decide whether or not they want to be involved with that. But I don't think it's fair to say, if the case ends up being where if he didn't lie about everything and he just came forward and said, hey, I want to tell you about this thing, which is that I have a friend and I donated sperm to her. I act as their uncle. They know the situation. I am involved. How does that make you feel? I think that it's not fair for us to say like, oh, that's terrible. Like he shouldn't be, you know, I think that it's important for us to consider that like that might be okay. And like that is up to the partner early on. Again, she was right in that like, you should have told me this earlier to decide. But I don't necessarily think that that is so weird or that's so bizarre or like we have no idea what their relationship is. We have no idea how these kids view him. If they're like, hey dad, and like clearly they're connected in a way that is not how I just described, I take it all back, but you know what I mean though.
Yes.
It's important for us to consider all the options here.
Right.
Yeah. That is an interesting point with Tyler. I think because there's so much unknown, we can't make that distinction. But in Tyler's case, I think with all these conversations that we have seen that Netflix set us up with, I want 7 kids. How ready are you for kids? What are you going to name our kids?
I know.
Like
too much.
That setup was wild.
It was.
It shows that these people are dying to tell the truth is really what it shows. And they don't have the tools to do so.
You can't do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that goes into our next question is, men have been lying like this all the time. And from our point of view, it seems like they're just lying to get ass in the moment, right? Do men's sexual, in your studies, in your academic studies, do men's sexual desires control them so much to where the gratification of getting pussy that moment trumps being honest about your entire life?
There is no research to back that.
See?
I love the leading question, by the way. And I think that it's a problem that we're kind of conflating. I think this is a bad stereotype that like men can't control themselves or like, you know, that they're just thinking with their dicks, etc. Because we should want more from men, meaning we should want honesty and kindness and respect and all of the things that I feel like we haven't really been seeing, like too much of them this season. I think that the tropes are really playing out. And I think that it's hard to watch because you know that millions of people are watching this and a lot of people are very impressionable and we very much kind of reenact our cultural scripts in real life. And so I think that if you're a woman who's listening and you kind of feel like your partner who is a man is not giving you like the respect and the pleasure and the mutual benefit that you deserve to be in an equal and open and honest relationship, again, it's important really to have a check-in with yourself. Is this the person that you want to be with? Is this something that we can talk about with compromise? Is this something that we can feel like both of us are equal partners in this relationship? Because I think the idea that men aren't able to have open, honest conversations without a payoff at the end of, you know, having sex or getting their dick wet, for lack of a better term, then that's problematic. I think it's just point blank, that's problematic. We should expect more from men.
Yeah. Wow.
I want to, but
it'd be hard sometimes.
I'd like to. I mean, like I think Garrett, right? Like we don't really know too much about him, but he's not really portrayed in a negative light. I think like if you don't say bad shit, then the camera won't pick up bad shit. I think is pretty clear. Just like be an adult, respectful human to your partner. And and I don't think we really see these tropes play out that much in women, right? Like all we've really seen is kind of Hannah. I mean, we've seen like the Leo Brittany thing. Is her name Brittany? Yeah.
Yep.
That whole thing, again, can I do a whole other episode on their dynamic? I've seen some pretty good TikTok content kind of reenacting what their first meetup was like. There's just a lot of weird kind of like boundaries that he's pushing. You know, I would love to teach an entire class on this show and media representation in Love is Blind. But there's so much here.
There is. Well, Danielle, thank you so much for joining us. We could be here all day. We could go through
easily.
the whole season easily. But thank you so much for coming to join us to really break down these last few episodes and some of the sex conversations and things that Netflix wasn't doing a good job, clearly, of like really breaking down. So this was really needed for us and our listeners. Thank you so much.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine. Again, thank you for letting me watch Love is Blind for work instead of for my personal addiction. Again, thank you so much.
Of course. Where can people find you? What exciting things do you have going on? Please share with everyone.
Yeah, so right now we're doing a fun series called Rom-Com Bomb. So if you like this podcast, I think that you would like Rom-Com Bomb.
Yeah.
We explore popular 90s and early 2000s rom-coms that gave us toxic messages about love and sex. We talk about rom-coms like Never Been Kissed, 10 Things I Hate About You, which I love. Shallow Hal, big yikes.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Forgot about that movie.
Yeah, we all forgot about it on purpose. And so lots of really great guests and great episodes there. You can find Romcom Bomb if you just search Sex Ed with DB wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to keep up with us on Instagram, we're at Sex Ed with DB Podcast, and on TikTok at Sex Ed with DB. And lots of fun content. You can check out sexedwithdb.com, and we have over 230 podcast episodes. So feel free to scroll and see whatever most interests you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Everybody go check out Sex with DB and all the good stuff.
Thank you.
And we'll be back tomorrow.
Sure will. Bye, guys.